Paul Sacher was an acclaimed composer and one of Switzerland's foremost musical experts. Incredibly passionate about classical music, he wanted it to be accessible to everyone. And when he passed away in 1999, at the ripe old age of 93, he was worth $13 billion. Wait a minute, what? Hold the phone, or rather the baton. 13 billion? How did he manage that? This, my friend, is the incredible story of how a little-known orchestra conductor became one of the top 3 richest people in the world in the 1990s. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett and Paul Sacher, who was actually the wealthiest person in Europe. He must have conducted a lot of concerts, right? Well, the truth is rather more surprising. Like many billionaires, Paul Sacher started from humble beginnings. His mother Anna came from a farming family. Father August was in the haulage business. Certainly no indication there that young Paul would go on to become artistic, but also make a fortune. Nonetheless, young Paul was clearly very ambitious. By the age of 20, he'd already established his own chamber orchestra, and by all accounts, he was great at networking and had lots of influential friends. Now, at that point, Sacher's life was just getting started. Meanwhile, Swiss pharmaceutical company Hoffmann-La Roche was doing a healthy trade in vitamins. Why am I suddenly talking about a pharmaceutical company? Well, think of this story as a musical composition, with different elements coming together to form a satisfying melody. You see, Sacher and Hoffmann-La Roche founder Fritz Hoffmann were both born in Basel, a city in the north of Switzerland that has only about 175,000 inhabitants. Sacher entered the world in 1906, which was a decade after Hoffmann had launched his business. And it's here that Paul Sacher's fate and that of Hoffmann-La Roche become linked. You see, the company name was inspired by Fritz's marriage to Adele La Roche. In 1934, however, it was Sacher's turn to tie the knot. His new bride was an artist named Maja, who was a widow who'd lost her husband in a tragic road accident. Her deceased husband was none other than Fritz's son Emmanuel, who had inherited his father's business in 1920. So Sacher didn't amass his billions through his musical work, but rather through marriage. But even though music was his main passion, he grew to become a very astute businessman, serving on the board of Hoffmann-La Roche for nearly 6 decades. And he took his responsibility very seriously. So much so that during this time, Hoffmann-La Roche grew to be the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, with revenues of approximately $60 billion. Roche's products are routinely used to treat cancer and HIV. They've played a role in medical history, making or developing staples such as vitamin C, Valium, lithium, and acne buster Accutane. But on a less illustrious note, it was also involved in the production of Rohypnol. Now, while pharmaceutical breakthroughs can be used for both good or evil purposes, when it comes to evil, Roche has had its fair share of controversy. The most shocking was its collaboration with Hitler during World War II. The firm reportedly used slave labour at factories in both Germany and Poland. Sacher was not involved with the company at that time, only taking over after World War II, but undoubtedly that collusion with the Nazis is a deeply disturbing part of the history of Hoffmann-La Roche. And, more recently, on the year of Paul Sacher's death in 1999, the company made headlines after news broke of its involvement in a vitamin price-fixing conspiracy. You see, US Department of Justice documents reveal that Roche led a global effort to manipulate the vitamin market between 1990 and 1999. Now, that crime actually resulted in a $500 million fine in the United States. And if that sounds like a lot, well, it is. At the time, it was actually the highest fine ever issued. What's more, Roche marketing director Dr. Kuna Sommer was handed a 4-month jail term. And then, in 2001, Hoffmann-La Roche received another fine of 462 million euros. This was for price fixing in Europe, for their role as part of a network of collusion that included 12 vitamins and 8 companies. In its reporting of the story, the Guardian newspaper points out that Roche had to pay the largest financial penalty of all the companies because they were the ones who instigated the whole affair. Sadly, the company is still involved in controversy to this very day. At the time of recording this video, there's a $1.5 billion lawsuit against the company on behalf of the US government and 29 states. This is a whistleblower action calling out perceived inaccuracies over the Tamiflu drug which Roche manufactures. Roche had stated that Tamiflu could significantly impact on or even stop influenza, but a separate investigation alleges that these claims are not adequately supported by facts, despite those benefits being advertised. Tamiflu was first patented back in 1996, and in all honesty, we can't say to what extent Paul Sacher was involved in any of these situations. By 1989, he'd become a widower, meaning he was Roche's main man, whilst in his 80s. But of course, while he was certainly the company's key figure, ultimately it's unclear how much decision-making power he had on a day-to-day basis at this huge pharmaceutical company. So what sort of man was Paul Sacher in the boardroom? We know he was generous about the arts and he was keen to share his gift of music with the world, but did he take a similar line in his activities at Roche? Well, in their look back at his life, the New York Times writes that, quote, Mr. Sacher was a savvy businessman and workaholic, affable and cuttingly sarcastic. Now, according to reports, following his death, Paul Sacher's stepchildren received a stake in the company worth approximately 9%. So it could be argued that Sacher leaves behind a tangled business legacy. But that's not to downplay his artistic one. He's founded a number of institutions, including the Paul Sacher Foundation and the prestigious musical training centre Schola Cantorum Basiliensis. The foundation he founded is located in the centre of Basel and houses one of the world's most important collection of musical manuscripts. These were manuscripts that he purchased during his lifetime and includes complete collections by several of the most important composers of the 20th century. Of course, as a conductor, he was also very highly regarded and conducted orchestras around the world. Notably, he also commissioned over 200 works, including from composers such as Bartók, Harrison Birtwistle and Benjamin Britten. Those works would simply not have existed had he not commissioned them, and that support that he gave many young and up-and-coming composers of the time give us a powerful indication into just how devoted and how much he loved classical music. Many of those commission pieces are what's known as madrigals, a lesser-known, less mainstream type of classical music. In their obituary, The Guardian describes him as, quote, one of the last great musical patrons of our century. And he's a welcome reminder that billionaires come in all shapes and sizes. Paul Sacher wasn't someone who blew his own trumpet, it seems, yet he managed to oversee and orchestrate major deals and massive growth for one of the biggest companies in the world. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, you might also like the crazy story of the man they call the Warren Buffett of the Middle East. This multi-billionaire has an insane story, including being arrested by his cousin. I'll leave that on screen for you to check out now. And if you've made it this far to the end of the video, do me a favour, hit that like button, and if you're not already, please consider subscribing for lots more videos. Thanks for watching, I'll catch you on the next video.